Are your customer acquisition costs too high? Lifetime values too low? Are you uncertain if your communication strategies are helping or hurting the efficiency and effectiveness of your marketing efforts? Welcome to the Continuous Revenue Marketing Podcast, where the most influential marketers in the world are sharing their insights and lessons on the critical topics they and their chief executives must address daily. How to drive consistent business growth by delivering more revenue through profitable acquisition and customer lifetime value maximization strategies. What you'll hear by listening to this podcast are the exact strategies and tactics our marketing experts are using to achieve these critical missions. Hi, I'm Russell Kern, CEO and founder of Kern and Omnicom Agency, and I'm joined by my co-host and producer, Elliott Dennis. And for this podcast, I'm exceptionally excited to welcome Luke Taylor, the global CEO of Omnicom Precision Group, a man I have incredible respect for and seen the tremendous growth that he's driven for all of our agencies within the group. So Luke, it's an honor to have you. I'd like to just have you set the stage for our listeners today to just do a brief about your journey of how you came to this role, because I think it's pretty unique from Oyster to Digitas to Omnicom. And then we're going to get into personalized marketing. So let me throw it over to you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Russell. Pleasure to be here. Crikey, the background piece there's the short version, the long version. But it's a little quirky, but I think it sort of sets the stage. So yeah. I read English at university, so I was not equipped to really engage in the world of digital transformation. But having read English way back in the midst of time, 92, 93, and leaving university then, quite quickly got involved in the internet, actually set up a thing called the Internet Bookshop. It was bookshop.com, believe it or not. We were quite fast out the gate. Founded it in 93, went live in 94. So I think we were the second e-commerce merchant on the web. I mean, sort of cozy. And so got into it that way. So trying to sort of marry together my love of the humanities and literature in those days, but with my entrepreneurial enthusiasm, I guess. And that took me into the world of e-commerce and teamed up with an incredible sort of boffin who was at Oxford with me. And we set up shop in Oxford Science Park because we'd all been at the university there. So sort of incubated it there and went on a great tear, and eventually the commerce bit sold to WH Smith's, which is a big retailer, and I evolved the consulting arm into Oyster and focused on the services component. And Oyster, I guess, started off and sort of almost led with consulting and technology as opposed to creative and UX, which is how a lot of those early web agencies developed. So we were really out of the gate a little bit more preoccupied by the business model, the econometrics, monetization, process design, which was a little counterculture to the other web shops in those days. And that's partly because in my holidays through university, I was working at a strategy consulting house called LEK. So I sort of, that was my sort of, I guess, the sort of my business enthusiasm at the time. And Oyster grew. We took a very early investment from Omnicom when they did the investment in Razorfish and Agency and Red Sky. And then it became a public company. And this is, I guess, was one of the big challenges for me. I then was elevated to the CEO of a public company. We were listed on the Dutch market, the Euronext, and it was about 70 different P&Ls. And it was just, I was elevated to the CEO just as the universe was unraveling, and we had to take out a huge amount of cost. And we had 60 companies that all had nothing in common other than the word digital. So some of them were managed services companies. Some of them were pure creative and UX. There was a company called Meta Design, which is a brand company. Some were sort of on the data management side. There was no unifying strategy. It was a sort of, it was a dodgy roll up. It was a sort of portfolio, trying to ride the era of cheap money and the sort of on the digital sort of .com multiples, and then ran out of runway when the world sort of unraveled. So, my first job was to stem the bleeding and sort of start trying to make money and sort of, and we were in the public market. So it's a very sort of, there's a lot of scrutiny. And, the way we did that is we took those 60 P&Ls and we created one company, LBI. And we realigned the entire offering globally around a single consistent set of services against that value chain. So, we have managed services at the back end that would do the support and the optimization and the maintenance. We retasked our data and analytics companies so they could drive continuous improvement. We put the UX at the front end and married it with the business analytical functions. Then we put all the build groups together. So we created this vertically integrated group, and we started to then win stuff again, and I think it was we were valued at 60 million on the public markets when we took it over, and then we sold it to Publicis then for, I think it was a sort of almost like a sort of 9x growth over quite a short period of time.
Nice success.
So that was the moment that gave me the confidence not to be nervous about P&L integration. Because, I think in the marketing services space, there's a lot of, everyone's very tentative around structural change, because everyone slightly, I think, sometimes hides behind the word culture. I mean, culture is obviously mission critical and drives everything, but it shouldn't get in the way of common sense when we have duplication or complexity or a sort of a 2 + 2 equal 5 thesis from a client perspective. And I think LBI was a good example where we took a big risk and we integrated everything reasonably quickly, and we drove that 9x increase in enterprise value over a very short period. So, and it was tough, and we had to get rid of dissenting voices, because obviously there are a lot of people that are resistant to change, and the first task was to be a little bit ruthless and to remove the impediments, people that didn't want to go on the journey, and then to reframe and sort of hire a management team that were 100% unconditionally bought into that integrated vision. And, and there was maybe 60% of the leadership team wanted to go on the journey and 40% didn't. But that was fine. So we had to reframe the team based on people's enthusiasm and desire to do it. So LBI, we were then at a point where we had quite a lively auction process, with all the usual suspects, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Publicis was where we ended up, and then we merged LBI and Digitas, and that was quite interesting because LBI, I think, was very good on designing and building complex digital platforms. And in those days, whether it was intranets or big e-commerce sites or massive scaled instances of sort of Adobe AEM, it was all sorts. And we were good at complexity, and we were good at size, and we were good at big complex multi-market rollouts. So that on the owned properties, we were good. And then we were really scaling fast on all of the performance media and the SEO and that side. So we were good there as well, partly through acquisition. But we didn't have a good understanding of media. So what was interesting, and we didn't have a brilliant understanding of CRM, we had some. So when we merged it with Digitas, we were actually sort of a slightly ahead of its time. We were a truly integrated full service agency. We had everything. We did 2.5 billion of media, which is just big enough in those days to be credible, i.e. we could get the right buying rates and all the rest of it. We had best in class CRM because Digitas gave us that. We had best in class technology delivery, and we had all the performance piece as well. You stitch that together, and it was a very powerful global offering of sort of 8,000 people. So that was fun. I think that the slight issue then is, Digitas was the sort of sexiest thing in the sort of the toolbox for a period, and then there was Sapient, and then there was Epsilon. So there was a sort of, Publicis, to its credit, was on a very energetic transformational journey, and they had, and they were really sort of investing energetically behind it. But I think it was as Digitas and LBI came together and defined, I think, quite a strong next generation offer. That's when John Wren came and said, can you put together something similar inside Omnicom? So can you combine the technology and the consulting and the CRM skill sets into an integrated P&L, so that we can combine all of those skills and orchestrate those skills in a very powerful way on behalf of our clients without, and we want you to eliminate any complexity, eliminate any sense of silos, and make sure that we can create these powerful bespoke solutions for our clients from across that sort of set of services.
So Luke, that sets us up to talk about, and that was really helpful for me. I've worked with you for 4.5 years, and it provides a lot of insight into your thought process about, hey, I'm not afraid to bring organizations together. And I think maybe that's a piece of advice that you can share with CMOs, is don't be afraid to go against the trend to do what's business right, because you had tremendous success. But give us a little bit about who now is OPMG, because that was your charge from John Wren. And let's talk about that, because I think the audience would like to know, okay, who is this OPMG? What is it? And what are you stitching together this time? And why is it valuable?
Thanks, Russell. And I think, we pulled together 12 different organizations into the group, and they range from huge to sort of small to medium size. They have a number of different skill sets. So you've got everything from heavy technology companies, sort of who are very good at UX, like Critical Mass. You've got all this deep strength on CRM across Kern and Javelin and Wrap, Barefoot. And we've now got incredible. This is our proudest achievement. We had no consulting capability 2 years ago. We will have 5,000 consultants this year, and we will have grown it from, I don't know if I'm allowed to say numbers, but we would have grown, I'll do the maths, we would have grown it 6x over a 2-year period. So we're in, it's a huge number now. And so that was a net new bit of the puzzle. And then we got very good technology companies like Code and Smart Digital. So it was a variety of different pieces. But what we've done, it's similar to the playbook from LBI days, is we've effectively created 3 legs to the stool. So one leg, which obviously which well, is the CRM leg, and that is all around activation, really sophisticated activation, and using AI and increasingly sophisticated algorithmic methodologies to drive the next best action. And the sort of the flight path for the CRM companies is really, obviously it's got to be brilliant at activation, and that's all about speed, efficiency, agility, and that's one core component. That's just about doing scaled activation faster and at better value with more accuracy and reliability than anyone else. And that's a real big thing there, to do it fast and at scale and with agility and flexibility. So that is one piece. And then the second piece is then all around the algorithmic work and the analytics. And that is really how to ingest data, clean it, expose it, append it, create that sort of unique ID system, build an algorithmic workbench on top of those data sort of lakes, and then sort of build and train algorithms into that analytics workbench to drive dynamic customer experience and next best action. So that's the CRM group. It's being brilliant at the activation piece and then being brilliant at the algorithmic decisioning piece. So that's one leg. And Wrap, Kern, those are the main target base, but that is in that leg. And that is a growing market, becoming more and more important, as we obviously need, first party data to obviously drive all of the experience going forwards based on the deprecation of the cookie and all sorts of things. But obviously, if you look at all big companies that we work with, they all have a strategy to get a bigger proprietary PII data set that they can monetize to drive upsell, cross-sell, and that they can use strategically to protect themselves against disintermediation by other competitive threats. So massive growth area. The second leg of the stool, where critical mass is our sort of lead proposition, is all around customer experience, omni-channel customer experience design. And that's a different type of skill set. So if the skill sets in leg one are really around process, workflow, the sort of the machinery around activation, and then the rigor and the sort of the cult of excellence that you need in that algorithmic and decisioning piece. So it's data science and activation is the skill set there. In the second leg of the stool, it's really around it's the relationship between customer experience and service design and innovation and technology delivery, because it's all around building beautiful, adaptive, personalized, flexible experiences. And the way that group is starting to scale and evolve is really taking that incredible sensibility around craft skills and experience design and moving upstream into owning the innovation mandate and the service design mandate for clients, because increasingly brands need to engage with customers not through messaging but through utility and service, and that's how they differentiate. So critical mass is very much focused on building out utility and service and tools as part of the brand extension and mission statement. That's leg two. And then leg three is the consulting leg, and that Credera is our lead brand there. And that is all around managing risk, change, complexity. So the skill sets there are program management and delivery, complex stakeholder management and governance, risk mitigation, process design and change management, technology roadmap, road mapping, MarTech strategy, definition, and then we've got a big offshore group with the delivery piece. So you've got a consulting and PMO layer, which is a sort of an Accenture-ish type of skill set. You've then got our sort of experience design and service innovation layer, which is more like the AKQAs and the RGAs. And then we have, I think, probably best in class in the entire industry, our CRM and algorithmic intelligence group, Russell Kern, etc. So those are the three legs of the stool. And then underneath those legs, we got some horizontals where we sit our IP. So we got very good tools to drive dynamic content orchestration, to drive real-time interaction management. We've got some really good intelligent production tools and systems. So those are a series of horizontal bits of IP that all legs of the stool can leverage as they need.
So that is the composition of the Omnicom Precision Marketing Group.
Yeah.
I want to go to personalized marketing, but before we do, I'm sitting here listening, and I want to talk about something personal, which is you have an ability to see where the puck is going. And you did it twice. This is the second time as you can bring companies together. Maybe you could share a little bit about just sort of your strategic thinking or leadership philosophy as these CMOs are trying to figure out how to bring their pieces together, because you're obviously great at what you do. I highly respect it. So can you kind of say, guys, and gals, this is how I think about businesses. And when you're thinking about all your divisions, here's some of the wisdom I've gained over stitching and piecing companies together. Is there anything we could do about your philosophy, your leadership philosophy?
That's a good question. I think something that has been consistent, which I've always taken for granted, but maybe is a little unusual sometimes, is that I'm never that happy from a quality of service and the quality of delivery perspective. I guess I always think the status quo is not good enough. And even when we climb a little mountain, God, there's always so much to do, and there's a sense, I think, from a leadership style perspective, and I hope it's energizing for folks that I work with, but there is a sense of energetic restlessness, I hope. I want to make it more positive than frustration. It's a sort of constantly trying to challenge the status quo, constantly trying to sort of interrogate what we could have done better, as opposed to congratulating ourselves on what we have done well. And I think that comes out of the internet space. I mean, the irony is when we were doing this in 95, 96, we were building, I think, things that were as innovative and extraordinary as anything you can get today. Because during that .com period, there was a sort of real sense of crazy ambition, and obviously the numbers were sort of huge, and everyone had a .com business plan, and it sucked the life out of every dinner party for about 4 years. So it was a really energetic time, but it did institutionalize this sense of real frenetic pace and sort of ambition and sort of enthusiasm for what can be achieved. And I think living through that, I feel that there's always a sense that, God, we've got to get better at this. We've got to get better at that. And I think it's partly because the digital guys have always been burdened a bit by nerd baggage, and they were never the people the CMO wanted to talk to 6 years ago. We always had to sort of slightly sing for our supper, and no one quite understood us. And we were always a bit sort of hiding in the back, and there were the sort of glossy, more sophisticated advertising guys who they did want to talk to. And it meant that we were always trying to lift our game and polish our offer. And I mean, I think through the whole evolution of everything I've done, we're always incubating new services and bringing new things to market. And I guess that's different to a more traditional creative business, because they've been successful for so long, those businesses, that maybe the incentive to change and be restless has not historically existed, because it was, they've been doing brilliantly for a long period of time, and creativity only gets more and more important with the passage of time. But for a long period of time, it was a tough existence for us, and we had to constantly improvise and adapt and change and pivot. And I think I love the word pivot. I mean, it's sort of obviously a Californian term, but crikey, I mean, we pivoted 5,000 times over the last 10 years in terms of changing and adapting and integrating and buying new stuff. And I think it's that sense of restlessness, I think, is one key component to the management style. Going to bed at night thinking about what we can do next, rather than congratulating oneself.
I can say, as the recipient of that, Luke, is you deliver that in a positive manner. So I'll just give you that little bit of feedback, because it's not.
I hope I don't come across as just highly caffeinated.
No, it's not highly. It's good. It's good. I work with another CMO at a very large organization. I could talk about DirecTV, and he had the same sense as you did, which is, I'm just never happy. I just want more. I know our team can do more. And so that was the leadership language. And that's your leadership language, which is, we can do more. Yeah, we achieve, but let's do. So I think that's good advice for all CMOs, which is, we can't be settled, is what you're saying, is we got to motivate our team for the next thing.
But interestingly, I now see that with all the CMOs I talk to. I think 5 years ago, CMOs were sort of more comfortable with status quo. There's not a CMO I know now who's not worried they're not moving fast enough.
Thank you, Luke, for your insights on the value of stitching together various P&Ls under one umbrella, and the importance of making the leadership changes to find those who want to go on the journey. I clearly, from your background that you shared, you've made significant financial value from bringing organizations together under one umbrella. I want to encourage our audience to please stay tuned for our next episode, where Luke will focus on the huge consumer trends that are driving the need for speed within marketing organizations. On behalf of Elliott and myself, thank you for listening. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Until next time, I'm Russell Kern.
The Continuous Revenue Marketer has been brought to you by Kern, an Omnicom Precision Marketing Agency that helps Fortune 500 companies increase revenue from customer acquisition to loyalty through personalization at speed and scale. For more information, please visit kernagency.com.